Now let's talk a little bit about some losers from free agency. And as fun as it is to talk about winners, we got to look at the downside as well. So, Sam, start us off here. Who is your quarterback loser from the 2023 NFL free agency?
Well, I just talked about how big I thought Jacoby Myers might be a winner because he got to move on from this quarterback. I got to go with my biggest loser being Mac Jones. Look, I know they signed Juju Smith-Schuster, but Bill Belichick has long been considered one of the worst evaluators of wide receiver talent in the NFL, and I don't think that changes very much with this move. Devontae Parker has slowed down and might not be a part of the team going forward. Juju Smith-Schuster, there's a very big argument to be made that his 900-yard season was a big product of being thrown to from Patrick Mahomes, and he hasn't looked great in years. There's no real speed aspect to this team from the wide receivers. And Mike Gesicki comes in, but he hasn't really done anything. So I don't really know whether Mac Jones can be considered as someone who gained anything, despite the fact that the Patriots brought in a marquee free agent at wide receiver. And I just don't know. There have been rumors that some of the Patriots players preferred Bailey Zappi last year. There's a lot of signs that the Patriots have a lot of lost confidence in Mac Jones. It might not be out of the question that he could be benched at some point if he doesn't look good this season. I don't know. My vibe with Mac Jones is that his role as a starter is on very thin ice, and I just don't know if the Patriots did anything that's really going to help him this offseason.
Yeah, and the Patriots right now sitting at 14th overall. They might not get a quarterback there, but they are certainly in a position where they can move up if they want to go with a
Mhm.
Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson. And I don't think that's being talked about nearly enough. I'm with you, Sam. I think that people just assume that Mac Jones is going to be the 2023 starter without really thinking too closely about it. Bailey Zappi might press him for that job in camp. They might still bring in a free agent. They might move up in the draft to take a rookie quarterback there. I am completely with you. Mac Jones, if we're talking dynasty here, is pretty much untouchable. I don't want him on any of my rosters because I don't think that he has any semblance of job security right now. And he's looked terrible through his first
Yep.
2 years. So, Jeff, over to you. Who is your biggest quarterback loser from free agency?
Yeah, before I get to that, I've got a comment on Jones and the
Yeah.
Patriots. I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that Matt Patricia was on the offensive coordination last year, and this year, if it's Belichick or if someone else comes in as the play caller, but I believe it's going to be Belichick. I I don't necessarily want to just kind of throw him away as of right now, but I see the writing on the wall. I understand possibly Bailey Zappi being involved, so I understand that take. But I also think that Patricia is a big part of why the offense as a whole, including Mac Jones, struggled last year. So
Yeah, very valid point. I mean, really, Patricia shouldn't have been calling plays. That was a head scratching move.
no.
So you make a good point there as well.
Yep.
But Jeff, let's hear about your quarterback loser from free agency.
So I'm going to say Matthew Stafford, and the reason why is because it seems like the talent on the Rams is just disappearing very quickly. Plus, Stafford he's kind of entering that bad Matt Ryan territory where all good quarterbacks kind of eventually go. It seems. I mean, he's 35 years old, which is not that bad considering some of these elder quarterbacks, right, who have had some success, but he's got a career's worth of injuries and wear, and Stafford is he's looking less and less like a reliable quarterback, and the Rams aren't really doing anything to kind of help him. They're losing pieces on the offensive line, defensive end as well. He's got Cooper Cup, so he has his go-to fast hot read. But things just, in my opinion, are going downhill, not uphill for Stafford. So I'm kind of against him as someone who I think really could kind of, if we could say, turn a corner as a rebound from last year. Maybe last year's struggles and injuries is just kind of a precursor of what's to come.
Yeah, I mean, a serious elbow injury at his age, you don't expect him to rebound back to 100% at any point in his career from here on out. And then, like you said, I mean, they sold the farm to win that Super Bowl, and now they are looking at one of the most barren rosters in the NFL. So this could be a pretty disappointing twilight to the end of Matthew Stafford's career. But props to him. He got his ring after all those years in Detroit, so you can't be upset about that. Let's move on to running backs. Sam, who is your biggest running back loser from free agency?
Yeah, this one comes from a couple of days ago, but it's got to be Dameon Pierce for me, and that hurts given just how high I am on Dameon Pierce as as he was a prospect, as he is a player. Looked really good in his first year, but he looked to be struggling a little bit over the massive amount of volume that he took over last year for the Texans, and then they went out and signed Devin Singletary in free agency this year. And as we've all seen, multiple times over the past few years, these day 3 running backs, they can get replaced like that. Whether it be the draft, free agency, and the Texans might not be done adding pieces behind Pierce yet. And to me, this is a player who will not do well with losing volume, because that's what he relies on. They didn't really use him in the passing game, despite me thinking that they could use him in the passing game. He just didn't really see that much usage there, and he slowed down a little bit down the stretch last year. So I'm definitely a little bit worried by the Texans bringing in Motor. I think that we could be seeing the end of Dameon Pierce, RB1 season in Houston pretty quickly there.
Yeah, I think what was so disappointing too, if you kind of look at, zoom out a little bit and you look at Dameon Pierce's rookie season, for the first 3 weeks that he had the starting job, he was just destroying defenses. And then, defensive coordinators took note and they said, we need to stop this guy. And just like that, they stopped him. I mean, he's not the type of player that you can game plan around and he can still beat you. When they decided that they were going to load the box and stop Dameon Pierce, they stopped Dameon Pierce. So that is definitely concerning. Completely with you there. Singletary is not the end of the backfield here. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they spend up on another running back in this year's draft. Jeff, that leaves us with your running back loser. Who do you have as your biggest running back loser from this offseason?
Running back loser is such a harsh term.
I know, it really is.
So I'm gonna say DeAndre Swift, guys.
Yeah.
The Lions and Dan Campbell have decided that Swift is best used as a complementary piece than as a premier rusher, and the signing of David Montgomery just completely reinforces this belief. I'm not saying that Swift is not going to have value. He could have success in that role, that third down back role, but we should temper our expectations of him. I mean, he's not a starting running back for fantasy terms, right? And he's going to be more of a complementary piece. And I think we have to come to that realization that that is what we're going to see. We saw it last year with Jamal Williams, and David Montgomery is taking over Williams's role, and Swift will be the weapon, but not the primary ball carrier, if you get my drift.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those situations where people, suffer from tank lock. And back in 2020, when these guys came into the league, so many people were saying DeAndre Swift was better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he was better than Jonathan Taylor. And everything we've seen so far through his NFL career shows us that that is not the case. But you still have the Swift faithfuls out there that think that he is going to be this explosive 3-down back. And you hit the nail on the head, Jeff. I mean, it just looks like they want to use him as a pass catcher and nothing more. And that role could still provide some value in fantasy. I mean, he makes for a great flex option because he's going to get targets and he could rip off big plays from anywhere on the field. But if you're hoping that he's ever going to stumble into a role that, gives him 18 to 20 touches per game, that's just not going to happen at this point. He's a flex play and nothing else. And that is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. That leaves us with wide receivers. Sam, who are the wide receivers that you see as losers from free agency?
Yeah, and look, I've done nothing but crap all over players that I have loved all their careers, and I'm choosing another one here. And again, it's like someone has my voodoo doll and is just forcing me to pick players that I like. But I think Gabe Davis, is another huge loser here. Look, the Bills went and pulled in much more options. They added both Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield in free agency. Sherfield looked, good for the Dolphins last season. And Deontay Hardy is another option that can play downfield. And, he has a pretty respectable, 83.1 PFF grade over the past 3 seasons, just being a rotational player for the Saints. And I think that he's going to take away a lot of downfield looks, that Gabe Davis kind of handled for the Bills last year. And I just don't know. Gabe Davis, there's something off about his season. He definitely put up the most yards and targets and everything for that he's had in his career so far last year, but he had quite a few drops that just didn't look good. His hands at times were not great. His route running, was a little bothersome, and I think the Bills just did not really trust him down the stretch there. And there was just that one huge spike game against the Steelers early on in the season where he had the 98-yard touchdown catch. And after that, there was kind of felt like a little bit of bad blood between him and the team. So, this was definitely a concerted effort for them to upgrade. We have the rumblings of DeAndre Hopkins possibly joining him after he posted the Buffalo Soldier song on his Instagram story this morning. So, there could be a lot of movement in Buffalo, in terms of wide receivers. And I think they're a prime candidate to add someone through the draft this year if they don't pick up Hopkins as well. So Gabe Davis for me, he's been one of my favorite players, but I think his run definitely as the number 2 receiver on the team has probably come to an end.
And I think what's so shocking too is like we always have these very polarizing players, and I don't know if there was a player that was more polarizing than Gabe Davis last offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And typically their value the following season makes or breaks on the previous year's production. So Gabe Davis goes into 2020 extremely polarizing. By all intents and purposes, face plants, and now he's still getting drafted as a wide receiver 3 in best ball drafts. For whatever reason, people haven't learned their lesson. I mean, they're still holding on to one playoff game for 2 years ago as a reason to get this guy when really, I don't know if he's all that much different than Quez Watkins. He's going to have big plays on an explosive offense, but he's not somebody that you can plug in as your wide receiver 3 comfortably. So I'm with you there, and all of the moves out of Buffalo are showing that they agree with you as well, Sam. So, Jeff, bring us home here. Who is a wide receiver that you see as a loser from free agency?
I think we have to take a look at the obvious elephant in the room, and that's what the heck are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going to do without Tom Brady? As far as the wide receivers are concerned, obviously I'm talking about mostly Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But, what has Tampa done since Brady retired? They signed Baker Mayfield. They have Kyle Trask as an alternative. Mayfield, I was looking at his stats. Mayfield had 2 games last year. This is with Carolina and also with the Rams. 2 games where he either had multiple touchdown passes or 300 yards passing. That's it. Just 2. So I don't know how Tampa is going to rebound off of this here. The trickle-down effect on the Bucs receivers will be noticed this year. I just don't see how that is going to automatically be flowers and roses here. However, I will say this. Last year, I kind of thought the same thing about Seattle, right? Russell Wilson's out. Bobby Wagner's out. The team's kind of like, what are we going to do? Everyone's saying, Geno Smith is going to be fine. Everything's going to be great and wonderful. And, hey, look what Seattle did. I'm not saying that Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield is the next Geno Smith, but I don't know. We've seen how I could be wrong, and a lot of people could be wrong, because I think a lot of people thought that Seattle was going to be, kind of in the doldrums this past year, and they weren't. But shoot, I don't know what's going to happen with the Buccaneers. It seems like they are on a course for let's just finish this year as a dud, and hey, let's get one of these new quarterbacks coming in, Caleb Williams, Drake May, whoever that might be, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It's not looking good for the Bucs receivers, though.
And I think that's a fair comparison to make. Is a quarterback room, the way that we're looking at Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield right now, is it really that much different than what we were looking at with Geno Smith and Drew Lock last year? So you do make a good point there, and I appreciate you sharing both sides of the coin, but I don't know. I think that Geno Smith might be a little bit better than Baker Mayfield. So I'm with you. And it's scary because we have seen these guys just continuously, whether it be Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, just giving us huge spike weeks, playing great football whenever they're on the field. And now, even Jameis Winston was able to support these guys as wide receiver 1s. But like you said, huge elephant in the room. I am with you as well. It is definitely concerning.
I thought for sure that Tampa was going to say, hey, Jameis, come on back. He would have been a decent type of bridge veteran type of quarterback that they could use. But I mean, they've got to have a different plan other than
Yeah.
where they're at now. And I felt the same way about Seattle last year.
I mean, you almost get the intention that they're just saying, hey, our sights are on 2024 and Caleb Williams. I don't know what else it really is because they clearly aren't trying to compete this year. So they got to be looking at the future. Be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/footballguys. That's going to help other people find this as well as giving us a thumbs up. So give us a thumbs up, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. If you got anything to add, whether you agree or disagree with us, leave that in the comments and we will be sure to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.